Today is Election Day. So if you haven't voted yet today, everybody get out there. The polls are open until 8 p.m. So this is Trevor Crow. This show is Trevor and Friends. And sitting next to me, I'm delighted to have DTC Chair, and that's Democratic Town Committee Chair, Christina Downey with us today. Hi, Christina.
Hi. Thank you for having me, Trevor. Appreciate it.
Yes, and this is a big day for you, so thank you for taking the time out to talk to us.
You know, I'm bopping around town from polling place to this and that, so it's just one more stop on the journey.
This is good. Okay, tell everybody why it's important to vote.
You know, I think people get so focused on national elections. What they really don't appreciate is how important the local and the municipal are. This is what affects our taxes, our schools, our police, everything that makes, in this particular case, Greenwich such a wonderful place to live. And voting for the people you want representing you in the town government is vitally important.
So it directly impacts you, and in fact directly impacts your children. So Christina, why is it important, do you think, to vote for Democrats?
I think what we've shown in this particular election is a unified slate of candidates who will bring thoughtfulness, intelligence, enthusiasm, and open minds to the leadership of the town. We have great candidates for our first selectman, Anthony Moore, and selectwoman Rachel Khanna, and in particular our BET candidates. And the BET is kind of a strange animal, how we vote for it here in town. Because of the party affiliations, it's a whole crazy voting system. But the 6 Democrats who we are running for the BET have years, dozens of years of financial experience on Wall Street, and will bring data-driven decision-making to town hall to help show what the priorities are in this town and spend money wisely, but keep our taxes low. We all moved here because taxes are low. I think there's a lot of false narratives out there that claim that Democrats are tax and spend. Well, this is Greenwich. This is not tax and spend land. This is about quality of life.
So, okay, people are going to ask, like, right, you're going to spend more on schools. I would imagine that'll be one of our top priorities. Is that correct?
I'm not sure it's necessarily spend more, but I think it's about properly funding the schools. I think, you know, there was a massive cut by the BET last spring to the operating budget, which it was massive to the schools, but relative to the entire budget, it was a small amount. But that $4 million, and yes, it was $4 million on a $500 million budget. So not even 1% would have made an immense impact on for the betterment of the schools, but a decision was made, led by the Republicans on the BET, to cut that number in the interest of keeping the taxes at a particular number, as opposed to looking at what the proper number would be.
So this kind of, if you pull back, you know, go up the 10,000 feet, we need a better sort of long-term thought process on what to spend our money on, how to bond, how to rebuild a lot of these infrastructure pieces down to the schools and hardening the sewers, et cetera.
100%. And, you know, there's been actually zero done over the last 2, 4, 6 years in town hall.
Can you say that again?
I think in the last 2, 4, 6 years of zero planning for our future in this town. And that's one of the things the Democratic candidates are focused on, is that we need a better planning, and better planning will allow us to keep our low taxes and be thoughtful about the choices we make as a town, as opposed to waiting for a crisis, like a school getting condemned. But let's say, okay, that school's going to be a problem. Let's plan for it, because as we all know, with our own homes, when you have a crisis, it always costs more than when you plan for it.
When you're reactive. If you plan ahead, you have good maintenance, you have plans. This is very important. So while we're talking, anybody tuning in right now, Trevor Crow, the show is Trevor and Friends. I'm on with Christina Downey. She's the chair of the Democratic Town Committee. I did offer the other half of this show to Michael Hahn, the Republican Town Committee chair. He is away right now, unable to come. He said he would come another time. But on this particular day, since it's election day and we could have extra influence on people, I want everybody to know that I did offer this also to Fred Camillo, because last week Anthony and Rachel were on. So I want everybody to realize that we have tried to make this an even playing field on this particular show, because I believe in democracy. I believe in your right to vote, your citizenship, your responsibility of showing up and getting to the polls. So right now in Greenwich, there's some really important issues here that if we change up the leadership, we could really impact the town greatly.
Unbelievably, yes, so totally. And think about it. There are people in so many countries who would love the opportunity to actually cast a meaningful ballot. And traditionally in municipal races, the turnout's quite low, barely 50%. So this is an opportunity to exercise the one thing we can do and really have an impact. Whereas, we can all get down a rabbit hole on the state and national level, but this is about our quality of life and having a voice in the town we live in.
So Christina, you're telling me that if Democrats were elected, they would use long-term planning, different type of leadership here, with the intent to not raise taxes. Is that correct?
Realize taxes go up every year. They do go up every year. It's just how much they go up, right? That's a false narrative. But we want to maintain low taxes. That's one of the hallmarks of living in Greenwich. And our candidates all stand firmly behind that concept. But it's about planning back to and leadership and listening to the voices in town. For example, not having a fiasco where you get too far down a runway on the skating rink, and that planning hasn't been done and a committee hasn't been operating in a transparent or thoughtful with the neighbors process. That's not going to happen with the Democratic candidates.
So you guys are pledging to get all the stakeholders involved early on and have those conversations.
100%.
Very important. Okay, so we are understanding now that SNAP, a supplemental nutrition assistance program, could be actually has expired or is not being funded right now. We have 883 families in the town of Greenwich. It's about 1,500 people that have less food today than they did last week. If we're in charge, what planning would we have been doing? Because I don't think a whole much has been done right now in the present leadership of Town Hall. I don't have Fred here, so he can't tell me, but I don't think
that's a great question, Trevor. I know that we, in the Greenwich Democrats, we've been doing a food drive at our headquarters and at our meetings, in large part, I think, in anticipation of what's coming to happen. So we are focused on it. And I think, looking at what the grants are, looking at how to manage whatever we can do to support the nonprofits in town that help with food insecurity, like Neighbor to Neighbor. I know you're having the director on. Give a plug. I'm a big Neighbor to Neighbor fan. And our Health and Human Services Department, listening to what they're telling us we need.
Demetria Nilsson, who is the director of that Health and Human Services of Greenwich, is an amazing person. We're quite lucky to have her. But we need to have these plans in place and to be thinking ahead. And thank you.
We can't be putting our head in the sand on anything. Food, buildings, schools, police. This is part of life. We have to plan. We do it in our personal lives. We have to do it as a town.
Yep, we do. Okay, so there, again, any voters out there who are kind of on the fence today, they're looking, they maybe haven't done much research, they're going to hopefully get to the polls. Again, anybody who might be voting today, the polls close at 8 p.m. Any kind of sort of influence you might touch
I think the League of Women Voters has been an excellent resource, and their guide is online to all the candidates who are running in town, as well as we have a lot of information on our Greenwich Democrats website. But I would urge people to really to get to the polls, exercise the right, but be thoughtful. Talk to friends and neighbors who you trust, whose judgment you trust. And that's a way, I know there's a lot of people like to email their friends, and I know people have reached out to me personally and say, what are you thinking? That's an important network, and we are all neighbors at the end of the day.
Yes, I totally agree. I don't know if you know the Voting Moms, Emily and Jenna.
I've met with them.
They're terrific, but that's another newsletter. If you want to do a little digging right now, they give you a great perspective. And again, you do have to do a little education of yourself, a little research. You just kind of, it's hard. There's a lot of names on that ballot.
Oh my goodness. And and I'm a super engaged person, but for many years was kind of moderately engaged. And, we don't always think about the RTM and the RTM races, which in particular the Voting Moms gave some bipartisan recommendations, not just party-based, because it's not supposed to be a partisan
Can you actually explain what the RTM does?
Sure. The RTM is 230 Greenwich residents, who is basically the legislature in town. They pass ordinances, and all budgetary matters at the end of the day do have to run through the RTM. So it's a really representative voice in town on a number of issues.
Just if anybody's listening, again, this is Trevor Crow. I'm talking to Christina Downey, Democratic Town Committee Chair. Getting that right. We're talking about the RTM, the Representative Town Committee, that is the town legislature. It happens to be, I believe, the second largest in the country.
Second or third. It's up there. It's up there, definitely, which is kind of unwieldy.
It's a little unwieldy.
But it's it is representative. So that's the great thing about it. And it's the backside of the ballot. And there's a lot of names on there. And people sometimes just look at, I don't know any of them. And sometimes they take recommendations. But each part of town gets a different number of votes.
It's pretty confusing, but yes, please do your research. There's a bunch of whether League of Women Voters. I think it's myvote.ct.org. .gov. Myvote.ct.gov. That's right. Anyway, look up anybody. Think about your vote. Talk to your friends and neighbors. If you need to, you can talk to Christina. She might be at one of the polls.
Yeah, and you can also always call the Greenwich Democrats. Our headquarters phone number is on our website. We have a headquarters down in Greenwich Office Park through this election cycle. And again, there's still 8 hours till the polls close. That's plenty of time. And I know we're all busy people, but it's vital that people get out and vote.
So we were talking a little bit before the show started. So early voting here in Greenwich is going well. Tell me more about that.
We were the third largest turnout in the state for early voting. It's 14 days at Town Hall. So there was a number of people coming through, made it very convenient. There were 2 weekends. There were a couple of nights. And we had, I think, a couple thousand people voted early, even before Election Day, which I think is going to also diminish the use of absentee ballots. Because people who typically would have used those weren't in town on Election Day, but now maybe they just come and vote early, which is a lot easier.
It is so nice to have that early voting. I personally went last week. It was terrific. Really a good thing.
This is the first year it's being done in a municipal election because we only had it for the first time last year. So I think people are kind of tracking the numbers, trying to get a gauge, but it's hard compared to a national election.
So a reminder, the polls are open until 8 p.m. I'm going to be poll standing this afternoon at District 2, which is Town Hall. Where are you going to be?
I think I might be going back to, I was at Western Middle School this morning. I might be going to North Mianus. I think I'm going to be popping by Riverside. And our candidates are all out and about making the rounds as well. So you can have candidate sightings here and there.
Very exciting. Take pictures, post them on your Instagram. Right. So there are a lot of really big and consequential elections going on around the country right now. And in fact, in New York City, of course, we have Mamdani.
Which is a whole show unto itself. What's going on in New York?
So this could be a reshaping or I don't know what to call it if Mamdani is elected. But we also have Mickey Sherrill running in Virginia.
Spangenberger.
Yeah, Mickey Sherrill. Abigail Spangenberger is in Virginia. Mickey Sherrill is in New Jersey.
Correct.
So we'll see how all this rolls out because I don't know if you're a big Trump supporter, but there's some things that are looking pretty crazy, especially.
I'm the chair of the Greenwich Democrats. Do you think I'm a big Trump supporter?
This is unprecedented. It really
is.
Is.
But that's why local elections are so important because this is your opportunity to actually have some input and agency in decisions that are made, as opposed to feeling a little powerless over things at the national level. I mean, we're very fortunate here with our great Congressman Jim Himes and our senators Murphy and Blumenthal, who we really have an open line of communication with here in Greenwich. I think we're very fortunate, and the governors from here, we have access to public officials, unlike others. I think we really can speak to them, and they listen.
They absolutely
and
listen.
They're available, and you see them around, and you can have a conversation with them about most things.
Most things, yes. So, it's kind of hard to see a Great Gatsby party being thrown at Mar-a-Lago when people's SNAPs food assistance programs are not getting paid out, so they're literally hungry, right?
It's very tone deaf.
It's quite tone deaf, and it feels like the Roaring 20s. I just can't understand. But Everybody has their own opinion. We
That
have
is
to be respectful of that. But as Christina is saying, this is the day that you let our elected officials know how you feel.
About what your priorities and values are here in Greenwich. Do you care about infrastructure? Do you care about your first responders? Do you care about safety, traffic, and pedestrian? And do you want a leadership team who's going to embody those values and priorities?
That's right. And that is what we have. We have a democracy right now. Right?
In Greenwich, we do.
In Greenwich, we do.
And it's, I gotta say, just from the anecdotes I've been hearing, it's been very civil. You know, in the polls, we can agree to disagree. We're all still neighbors at the end of the day. So I think that's a positive takeaway of a day like today, that even if we don't agree, we can still be cordial to each other.
Well, and in fact, that's kind of what my show is about, which is we have to be able to talk and be able to listen and to be responsive and respectful, right? To really be able to listen with our open hearts. We may not be swayed in that direction, but at least you listen to with respect and with the intent to learn and understand.
Yeah.
That's
Hearing different points of view. Sometimes we're undecided on an issue, you know, and it's a dialogue then more than a monologue.
Yes. There was a time, I know, in Greenwich that the Republican Party, which has pretty much had a lock on this government, our local government, for close to 100 years. I have spoken to some of our past Republican leaders, and they planned for the future. They really did. They were like, okay, we know that the fire engine is getting too old, so we're going to have to plan out, and it takes several years to get a new one. And each year that you let go by, it gets more expensive.
Well, and that's important and for planning, and then also to memorialize that properly. Like, one of the things that happened is, as this lack of capital planning, is this crazy focus. I was crazy, but single-minded focus on a 5-year capital plan and just ignoring things that are past that 5-year mark, taking things out of the long-term capital budget, putting a zero in. Well, you know we're going to have to do it, but putting zero in isn't accurate. So it's back to the putting the head in the sand comment.
Yeah.
It's not accurately reflecting what's going to transpire over the next 10, 15 years in town. And in order to make good decisions, you really need the full picture beyond a 5-year. And that is something, back to advocating for the Democratic candidates, will do. And the RTM has spoken and said, we want a capital planning process. That's a representative body. People want it done, and it hasn't been getting done, even with people clamoring it to be done.
Yeah. So this is your opportunity, and today is election day. You're listening to Trevor Crow. The show is Trevor and Friends. The polls are open. They're open till 8 p.m. It is crucial that you vote, and we have a history of not really turning out in our municipal elections, and Democrats in general don't vote as much as Republicans.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. This is a little bit of a purple town now.
Yeah.
While we've had all this Republican local rule, we vote for Jim Himes. The town went for Kamala last year.
Isn't
So,
that
we
amazing?
kind of are, we have an interesting identity, which I think also with the influx of people from New York over the last 5 years post-pandemic, it's maybe a different demographic.
Interesting. Well,
Food for thought.
And again, I do think that some towns, like I've had some town legislators from New Canaan here, and they're like, our number one priority is always schools. The schools ask for something, and they pretty much get it without any argument. And we are not in that sort of spot right now.
Well, we deferred many, many years of maintenance. There was, if we're talking about schools, the Board of Ed has a master facilities plan, which was created in 2018.
Wow.
Where it said, these are
13
all
years ago.
These are all our buildings, and this is the prioritization of what we need to do. And took many years to even start getting any of those done. And the people who talk about Central Middle School, everybody knew then that Central Middle School was going to have to be rebuilt. It was not the number one priority, despite what some people say, but it talked about at that point, and still, we have 3 elementary schools that are not ADA compliant, and that should be our focus. 20 some odd years, maybe longer, since the ADA was passed.
1989, I think.
I was going to say 1990 was my guess.
Something like that.
So that the point being is that it takes time, and we had a lot of years that interest rates were basically zero. So we've had some missed opportunities in the leadership in town hall.
All right. So I want you to articulate this one more time, because I know most people go, oh, they're Democrats, because yes, I'm leaning Democrat. I know people know me well enough that they assume we're going to raise taxes and we're going to be irresponsible with money. Is that true, Christina?
Not at all. We are focused on low taxes, but planning in a way to maintain our quality of our facilities and structures in town, but not at the expense of a big tax cut. It's low taxes, low taxes, low taxes. Maybe that'll be our new Democratic slogan.
I like it, low taxes. Well, I also like fiscal responsibility, because frankly, everybody, our national debt is 37 or 38 trillion dollars. It's the most ever, and it's grown faster than any other president in the country. So federally speaking, we're in a very tough spot. And talk about dumping a lot of debt on our children, which we've already done quite a bit of that with student debt, and it's hard to buy a home. It's unaffordable. There's a reason why people like Zohran Mamdani is speaking to this younger generation, and he's saying, I get your pain. You can't afford to live in the city. You can't afford to pay for and you've got a good job. You're making $100,000. How can that be?
Right. It's crazy, the rents in New York. But even here, we want people to be able to age in place. It's not just about the schools.
Yep.
There's a lot of constituents. I mean, this is a large town, and so it's a balancing, as with anything in life. And so you balance out what the needs are, the time frame to pay for them, what the right way is, the scale with which you do things. That means planning.
Now, we did talk a little bit when Matt Deschamps was here about longer term borrowing, which I know is a hard thing for a lot of people to understand or really want to get their heads around. And in fact makes a lot of sense. When you buy a home, you don't pay for it in 5 years. When you build a school, which should last 70 years, you shouldn't have to pay for it in 5 years.
I defer to Mr. Deschamps' expertise on that one. Yeah. I agree with you 100% in concept, but and one of the other things that's been interesting is all this talk about that the Democrats are going to do $1 billion of borrowing. The fact of the matter is, according to our town structure, no substantial change in the long-term borrowing can happen without a bipartisan vote. And so even if they don't, the Democrats wanted to do it, they couldn't do it without Republican support. So I think people have lost sight of that, and there's a little bit of fear-mongering and
right. I like that.
kind of scaring people, but the reality is substantial changes and decision-making like that require a bipartisan vote, which has not been the case the last few years.
There's been a lot of tiebreakers.
And the tie-breaking vote doesn't get used for this one.
Interesting.
It has to be an actual vote. Yes.
Very cool. Well, I learned a whole lot. Thank you, Christina Downey, chairman of the Democratic Town Committee. Today's election day. You can find her at one of the polls today the day.
Yep.
The polls close at 8 p.m. And thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, well, then thank you, Trevor, for all that you do. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go to a station break. This is Trevor Crow. The show is Trevor and Friends, and you're listening to WGCH.